a special, special, special day. As you can see from all of these beautiful faces here, just so like all these models that I hired for this video. But we are bringing something back that we used to do before, which was a discussion panel. I'm really here just more like as a facilitator, so I'll kind of throw out questions or topics to the group that's here. And the series is called Generational Differences. So for each one, we kind of have different folks from different generations or different parts of different generations to really offer their own individual experiences and their own individual perspectives. And I think just these discussions are so meaningful, they're so valuable because more often than not, I think the outcome of these discussion panels really is this realization that we've got a lot more in common than we actually have in terms of differences. That's one thing. The other part is that it leaves you open to perspective. It makes sure that you're not kind of like having this tunnel vision, that you're not kind of stuck in this pride or ego based view where it's like what I think is right, it's the only right thing, when in reality a lot of times there's a lot of different ways and experiences and perspectives that people have that quite frankly it isn't even about being right or wrong, it's just different, and that's okay. And so that's what really I like to foster these conversations. I love to engage in conversations like this myself, like just in everyday life with family and friends and even strangers. Why don't you guys each introduce yourself?
I'm Kristen.
And who are you, Kristen? Who are you in terms of how you know me? And for anybody that's watched our videos before, you've obviously met Kristen many times. But.
So Angela, for those of you who know us well, Angela and I have been best friends for entirely too long. And we are also business partners. And yeah.
I'm not going to say your name. This person here.
What's your name?
I'm Charles. I am the assistant to both Kristen and Angela.
Everybody pray for him.
That's one of his 5 titles. I think he's being humble and saying one of his 5 titles that he literally has.
He's our office manager.
He's the all powerful us. And what about you, guy over here to my right?
I am Tony. I am from India, and I'm just sitting next to my lovely wife Angela, who is the CEO of AIS. So since she just brought me into this scenario, to give some of my work experience on this to share. So since I am from international, many of you are watching, hopefully are international.
Yeah. I think he'll have a lot of awesome insight actually to offer. So we're waiting on our other ladies to join us. I'll do a quick intros of each one of them as well. We've got Melissa, who's our Chief Operating Officer of AIS. She's going to be joining us. And we also have Courtney. Courtney is our team leader for our Flex Recruiting Services division. And then we've also got Stephanie, our newest member of our team. She's also in kind of one of these multi-hat wearing roles. So she initially and really is still a part of our virtual administrative services team. But in addition to that, we actually have her in training in our junior recruiter development program. So that's her latest and greatest new role with us. And I'm really excited to have her and just see her continued development. So that's the folks. And then, as I mentioned, we've also got Anthony, who's going to pop in here in a moment as well, who is our tech specialist. And he's just trying to get us all moving and grooving here with it. So today's specific topic is actually based on work ethic. There's a prior generational difference where we talked about kind of this concept of the buffet job mentality. Like this approach where people take a job and they go, hey, I'm going to kind of pick and choose between what parts of my job that I want to do versus ones that I don't. And like, what was the generational perspectives on that? Like, is that something that people agreed with, disagreed with, or if they do agree with it, why do they think it existed? So that's what we talked about before. But today, like I said, our topic is just kind of broader, and it's just kind of about like, I'm actually not going to answer as difficult as that might be, because this video will probably be entirely too long. But I'm gonna kind of just like point and round table it through where people can kind of respond. So let's start with my handsome husband over here. Tony, would you mind sharing, how would you best define or describe the work ethic of not only your generation, but like of your culturally speaking, in terms of like what's the perspective on work and what maybe like priority specifically from your generation?
You know, my work in the US maybe 7 to 8 years now. You know, I have like worked in 3 different companies. So when I think about this work ethics, it is kind of, you are fulfilling something that you are desiring, or you're achieving something, and as a consequence that you bring joy to, which also contributes to your family welfare, and eventually contributes to the society. That is the concept, like individual that support family, then that supports the society. So that's actually the ethics that as an Indian that we follow. So a chain leads to individual, to family, to the society. So to her point, so if 3 jobs I had in the past, so if yes, I'm now I have a leather business running now. So every time when I had a job in the past, so if I am ready to move to the next one, so I make sure my conscience is well enough to complete the task is given to me. So for an example, if I am leaving the particular company to another one, before I am given any assignments, I make sure that I do like satisfies me as an employee, also that I'm not like giving the problems into another person to resolve all of that stuff. So even though some of them may not be paid with the hours, so but I make sure that I do the jobs correctly to transition.
I'm curious to hear, and so one of the takeaways I just had, just let me know if what I'm hearing is accurate. Get it done. Like
Yes.
it wouldn't even be a consideration for you to walk away from something and not finish it.
Yes.
You see that as a reflection on you individually. You see it as a reflection on your ability to be a provider for your family. You see it as a reflection on your contribution to society.
Right.
So we are back with our other 3 ladies. Not going to go through introductions again. We'll just kind of pick up right because my husband here has got to run off and take care of our most important customers and go take care of some stuff there. So my last question for Tony before I continue with the rest of our conversation is, Tony, the United States is known to have a reputation, and this is kind of like a cliche saying, in that in the United States that we live to work, and that in other countries they work so that they can live. From an Indian perspective, what's your take on that about the United States, or maybe even like what exists in India?
We take work as an ethic, and at the same time, a leisure kind of, siesta. In an Italian perspective, you need to have in your life some siesta. It's not like on a machine running. But, in the Indian government as a culture, that we have festivities throughout the year. Of course, here in US you have too. But this festival is associated with kind of like relaxations and family get together and spend time together. So work comes, yes, you do the work, but it is not the work. Your entire life is based on the work. So
okay, thank you. Not that I want to kick him out, but he said he's got to go, so
yes.
he's gonna. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye, guys.
Continuing right along, I'm gonna, like I said, I'm just gonna kind of continue through. Giving as quick of a response as you can in terms of kind of this roundtable. So my next person I'm going to reach out to is Melissa. And hi, Melissa.
Hi.
And so the question I have for you is the same one I had for Tony before, which is, from your perspective in terms of your generation, what do you feel is the best way to describe like your work ethic?
I think it's strong. Definitely. I guess I wouldn't say we're 90 hours a week, but we're as long as it takes to get something done. And When you're working, you're giving it your all. And when you're off, you're off. So like, I guess I've always had like a work hard, play hard mentality when it comes to work ethic.
Okay. I think that's a great way to put it. So, so Melissa and Kristen and myself, we're actually all in the same generation. And I would definitely echo like what Melissa's saying, is that we were definitely a work till it gets done, and then work hard and then play hard. Definitely those two things. So, you know, just to kind of summarize that. Kristen, what do you think? Do you have anything different or something you want to add to that?
Not so much work hard, play hard. Same sort of idea. I am very dedicated to the work that I do because I carry my morals and values and commitment in life into work as well. If I'm going to be a loyal person, it's not like, oh, I'm going to be loyal in my personal life and then, you know, whatever kind of behavior at work. I'm loyal there too. If I'm invested into what I'm doing. But I definitely need my mental checkout and reset time. So it's not so much like play hard as much as it is I need time where I'm focused and productive at work and just cranking stuff out, and I need time where I'm just blank and not thinking about work at all in order to refresh. Otherwise, I reach burnout and I start.
The other thing I would add, I think, to our generation, and I'll age ourselves here a little bit in terms of us Gen Xers, is there. I definitely feel that our identity is tied to our profession, like our work life, and like part of how we would identify ourselves. And the reason I say that is because if you think historically, we are probably one of the first generations, like even more so than the baby boomer generation, that really benefited from the women's movement and the ability to have options. The ability to say, if I want to work, I'm working. If I want to be a mom, I'm going to be a mom. If I want to pick a certain type of profession, whatever it might be, we're really the first generation to benefit from that. So because of that, I feel like a lot of times if you think of like a pendulum, the pendulum swings from this place where it's like career and work had nothing to do with a woman's identity to this other side of it that kind of swung pretty hard to, I would say this for myself for a long time because I intentionally waited to become a mom later in life, that like my identity was, I'd say like a solid part of my identity until I had children was like 60-70% was exclusively had to do with my work life, my career life, and then also my my ministry life in terms of like that was also a job to me, you know, outside of my full-time job. So that's, I think, the other distinction I would give to our generation. So next up, I'm going to reach out to our friend Charles here and get the same question for you. How do you feel you would best describe your work ethic as a part of your generation?
So with my generation, I feel like it's a loaded question because a lot of us are working 9 to 5, but not working towards the weekend. Like I feel like I come from like the side hustle generation.
Oh, that's a good call out.
So like I'm like even myself, like I go to the 40 hours a week and then I get home and then after taking care of the kids and all that stuff, like I'm in the basement working on music and trying to get my next project out or whatever else I'm working on, any kind of like freelance work I'm doing, because it's like that's where my passion is. So of course I'm gonna like put work into that, but it also like I think it also has a lot to do with the practices that I have at my 9 to 5 and making sure that, you know, I'm professional, I go in and I try to do as much as I can to get things done, knowing that when I go home, my job's not done. I'm like, that's just the starting point.
I like that side hustle call out. I think that's really a really good one. Am I hearing you correctly too, that maybe part of the generation too for you would be is that there's not necessarily an association of like identity or passion with that 9 to 5, that like the 9 to 5 is more of just like, hey, this is to make my bare minimum income to pay the bills, and that my place for passion, my place for my identity is going to exist in like whatever that side hustle or hobby may be outside of work.
Because it's all about like legacy and what you leave behind, and like the 9 to 5 is like you said, like we're taking care of the like have to haves the bills and all that stuff, and then the passion is for like that thing that like I can leave for my kids and whoever else is in my family.
Do you feel like, and this will be a little bit of a tricky question, do you feel like there's also a gender component in that? And by the way, Court, I'm going to follow up with you on this part of it, because you guys are in similar generations. So do you feel like gender comes into play for that there's maybe still some work to be done for men to go, hey, it's okay for you to be in a full-time job that you're making money in and have it be something you're super passionate and love to do? Like, it's because like I know for my brother who's on the much upper end of my generation, like I've teased him about that before because he loves to cook, and I would say to him, you know, well, you should be a chef. Like, that's what you should do. You should go to school. And as a woman, that's what my reaction is. I'm like, you're an amazing cook. You're an amazing chef. Like, go to school. Like, go into culinary arts. And he would be like, no, I can't do that for my job.
Then I won't love it anymore.
Right. And that's his response to it. Now, it doesn't sound like you're that extreme about it, but is there still a part of you just kind of like, do you think gender-based that feels that way?
No, I think it really depends on the person, because like my wife, like she wanted to be a marine biologist, and then her mom was like, they don't make enough money. So like she ended up in science, but it wasn't for marine biology. I really think it's a person-to-person thing. It's like, I feel like one of the beauties of my generation is that's when you can start like zooming in the lens on person to person and being like, okay, well, this person is all about it, and this person like comes to work and they're like, yeah, I came to do this. And then there's other people that are like, oh, maybe they're not like super enthusiastic, but when it comes time to it, they're reliable.
Right. And I think the only thing I will say, just being not too much older, but a little bit older than Charles, is the patterns, maybe that's the best word to describe, the patterns of a generation start to become more obvious as the generations get older. So like things that right now for millennials that might not be as consistent right now, give it another 10, 20, 30 years, and you're going to definitely see more consistencies, you know, between it. So Court, I'm gonna bring it over to you, Courtney, the beautiful on our screen here in our panel. I'm going to throw the same question to you, you know, and again, you and Charles kind of sharing similar generations, but are a man and a woman and have, you know, different experiences. What's your thoughts on how your views and experiences have been based on your generation in terms of work ethic?
Yeah, so I would say, I like how you mentioned the live to work thing, because I would say, in my opinion, as a millennial, I feel like we're kind of in between the live to work, the Gen Xers, and then the work to live. It's kind of like I don't personally identify myself as what I do for a living. Kind of similar to Charles, like how he was saying, I think it's less of work being so important as it was to older generations. Yeah. It's just slowly making its way to, hey, I have a life outside of this, and I don't identify by what I do to make money for my family. I identify what I do for fun and who I am as a person. Yeah. That's kind of my take on it. Not that anybody has worse or less work ethic as the generations change, just a different view, I feel like, on what work is to them. Right.
And I think that's a great call out, because I've actually said for years, like in terms of as I was watching the millennial generation come up, I really admired that quality. And I still do, quite frankly, to a degree, but I still do. Like, I admire it in the sense of like, I really felt like a lot of my generation, at least the people I was around, we were workaholics. And like, and still to this day are struggling, even though a lot of my generation didn't become parents until like, I would say 80%, right? Like if we look back at Kristen and I's graduating class, 80% of the people I know didn't get married until they were maybe 28, 29, and like didn't start having kids until 28, 29, 30, 31. Like that's when they started having children. And the reason was because it was like, wait, we kind of want to go out there and like our identity was in our work. Like our identity was in this, like, just like go out there and make money and like, just like, and it's, you know, oftentimes I would say like, man, it kind of sucks because, you know, at some point in time, like what are, other than having a career or getting promoted or whatever, or even having money, like what else are you going to have to show for it? Have you, experienced the world? Have you had a chance to travel? Have you built like these memories and the things that ultimately are like what mean everything, the time that we have with our kids when they're small, you know, like these are the things that really look back on. So I always had like an admiration for that. Now with anything, there's extremes. And I think that there's maybe not so much from the Gen Xer perspective to the millennials, but as if anybody here spends 5 minutes on social media, right, there's a lot of like, I think conflict and turmoil between the baby boomer generation and the millennials when it comes to work ethic. Like when it comes to this perception of like the boomers kind of go pretty strongly and pretty vocally, like they think that millennials are lazy, right? Because they don't want to give their all, and that's their perception. And like I've actually had a conversation with my dad about this before. One of the things that my dad would say is like, here's what doesn't make sense to me. If younger people are so instinctual with technology and they're able to work faster because they know how to navigate tech, then why aren't they coming back and asking for more work? And like, so if you have 40 hours worth of work and you're assigned 40 hours worth of work and you're able to get that job done in 30, from his perspective, you should come back and ask for more work to fill in or to get ahead, right? Like, it's like, where's the motivation to get ahead and just get that additional, like get started on that with that additional 10 hours. And I was like, well, and then I feel like as a Gen Xer, kind of like the middle, the middle of the contentious two groups, you know, like I was like, well, I guess the way I see it is one is I'm like, I said to him, I go, don't you see that maybe some people could perceive that as like a punishment almost? Like, why am I being punished for working smarter? Like, shouldn't that actually be something that's rewarded instead of something that I'm being punished for? And he was intrigued by that thought process. He was like, I never really thought of it that way, you know? And I said, however, I do think that your point carries a lot of weight. Like, if you want to be promoted, if you want to be acknowledged and like as somebody like an MVP type of situation, that's not just based on doing the bare minimum. That's just not just based on doing your minimum expectations. That's about going above and beyond. Mm-hmm. And so in that situation, if somebody wants to be acknowledged, if they want to get a raise, if they want to get a promotion, if they want to be recognized for above and beyond performance, then you're going to actually have to do things above and beyond, right? So I think that was just like an interesting, definitely a generational thing that I think everybody here agree that that's kind of like the extreme view, you know, between the two. So cool. Thank you. Great call out, Court. I'm going to bring us next to Anthony.
So I think I have a very skewed, so I'm a younger millennial, right? I think I have a very skewed interpretation of like the economy and work ethic. I think the two are separate. Okay. Because like you could be a very hardworking person and the economy cannot just like work for you. Because like we grew up in the worst financial disaster seen in 60 years, once in a generation, like the financial collapse of 2008. Right. We saw like in our formative years what the economy does to hardworking people. It doesn't care about them. Right. So why should we care about it? So I have a very like my own mentality is corporate America is never going to do you any favors. It's not a benefit that they're giving you a job. They're not giving you a handout. You're selling your time. You're selling your skills.
Right. It's a trade.
Exactly. Yeah. So I see it as if my skills and my time are not being valued by a place, then I'm either going to quite quit or not do like what I'm not going to do above and beyond because they're either undervaluing me or overworking me and getting more out of me than I'm getting out of them. So it should be a relationship, and it should be a fair and equal deal in terms of like, hey, I'm going to do this for you, you're going to do this for me, do this for me, I mean like give me benefits, give me a pay, give me respect in my position, that kind of thing. Right. And if my skills are needed elsewhere, then I'm just be like, all right, well, you have a good day. I can still be a hard worker in terms of like work ethic in a personal life and a work life, but it's also where it's not expected that I am the how would you say it? Corporate America is going to always look out for corporate America, not for its employee.
I love that the call out you're making because I think that the millennial generation, when it came to corporate America, was an essential wake up call, right? It was an essential wake up call to corporate to say, because at the end of the day, like I always say, like in this kind of negative title I give to the Gen Xers is that like we're going to be known as the kind of complicit, like the obedient generation, because we didn't really put up any type of real fight with our parents' generation, like with the baby boomers. Like we didn't really, and older than that, because my dad's at the very, very beginning of the baby boomer generation. But like there really wasn't any real fight. It was kind of like, you tell us, like, here's what having a work ethic means. Okay, that's what it is. Here's what you're supposed to do. Here's what your values are supposed to be. Like, there really wasn't like a lot of questioning, in my opinion, and not a lot of disruption. And so
Well,
For
they
me,
were our parents.
Angela, I'd like to just add that as a Gen Xer and a woman, that I feel like Gen Xers were almost put too much pressure on us, because our parents were baby boomers and they were like, you have all these opportunities. You're a woman. You can work now. You can be an engineer. You can be this. You can be that. What are you going to do? Here's the pressure. What are you going to do with your life now? Are you going to be a doctor? Are you going to be a lawyer? Are you going to, it was a very big pressure from early on for girls. I even went to special programs in school with girls my age, to special math and science programs. Right. Because I did well in school, and so they were like, oh, you can be an engineer, and it was almost unfair, because there was an imbalance, because the previous generation didn't have those opportunities. So they were like, you need to do something. What are you going to do? Yeah. And so I feel like that was kind of a
probably why there was like a lot of complicit approach to things, because we were feeling a different type of pressure, than what the boomers or older would have done, per se. But I think it's a great call out. And quite frankly, I use the word essential because I do believe that. I believe that the millennials' lack of complicity with the traditions of corporate America was essential to start to move forward and to start to evolve. Because I will tell you, like, everything my dad has shared with me, you question nothing. Like, if you were in a job, and my dad actually worked for the government, so I feel like it was like even more extreme in that regard, but like him or any large corporate, if you were in a job and you were told you are expected, we don't care if it actually takes you 80 hours to get this done and to hit this deadline, you're going to hit it. Like, it's not even a conversation. And if you don't hit it, there's no excuses. And if you try to provide excuse, that was perceived as like, this person's lazy, they're not doing their job. Like, it was just unquestionable. And on top of it, I would say that like my dad's generation, their entire identity was really work. And then second to that was like husband and father. And then like hobbies and stuff like that weren't even a conversation really, right? Like that was like passions, interests, hobbies, like that wasn't even on the list, So that's a pretty significant, right? Like jump.
Yeah, I was going to say, and I think that's a lot of what has influenced like the millennial mentality. It's like you think about all those kids who watch their parents come home exhausted, like just mentally beaten down. Like I remember seeing my parents just like coming home and just being like, God, and like carrying the work home with them and being too busy to do this, that, and the third.
Right. You weren't really like engaging, right? Like, except for the like occasional vacation or whatever. Like even on the weekends, it was just like, hey, I've just gotta re-energize myself, to get back into the grind again on Monday, Which, by the way, like that's like one of those words too that I was really confused about as a Gen Xer when I would hear about millennials say like, I gotta grind, and I'm like, oh, they're gonna grind, like that, they must mean grind the same way I mean grind, and then I was like, oh, they don't mean grind the same way that I mean grind.
Absolutely not.
The grind for the millennials starts up here. It'll work down to the rest of the body, but we're here first.
But it's actually what I was specifically say is it's not in reference to time. Yeah. So like that was the biggest difference, was like when I would hear like millennials use the expression like I need to grind, I thought that meant that they were going to be investing a lot of their hours and their time of their life into work. Like that was my instant interpretation. And is it more so like a focus, would you say? Like is the grind like more
so they are in the situation, or the vast majority of people in our generation where we have to grind to make a livable existence, where we have enough money to not just live paycheck to paycheck, and if we want to live past paycheck to paycheck, that's grinding. That's like,
Oh,
yeah, that's grinding.
I'm learning something today. I had no
Yeah.
idea that's what that meant.
So the vast majority, I think,
What happens when you have to puree? Maybe people should be pureeing.
62% of people, like the average American,
Is it a cheese
60%
grinder?
makes
Manual?
less than $48,000, and that's like paycheck to paycheck.
Oh, for sure.
So that's over half the population is living paycheck to paycheck. And that grind is to make sure you have bills. You can't get sick. You can't have an emergency. You can't. Your roof can't leak. That's $500 that you
Yeah.
don't have because you don't have savings. The grind is to make sure that you can continue on.
Yeah. Ooh, that I just
Yeah.
moment. I didn't know that that's what grind meant. So now I know. So we will go to our last but not least. And by the way, Steph, this is nothing but a pure compliment to you because, to be honest with you, I have no idea how old you are. But I made the assumption that you're on the youthful side of things. Which generation are you a part of?
I'm a millennial.
Okay, so you're kind of probably in the similar land of
I'm like
Anthony.
right in the middle. I would say millennial, Gen Z.
Okay.
I'm 20.
Yeah.
Even though there are some instances that I could relate to Gen Z, but there's a lot that I can't. I feel like I'm more of a millennial.
Okay.
Because I agree with everything that Anthony said. I think that millennials are, they want to be respected, and if they aren't, then they're like, okay, bye. I'm going to I'm going to go somewhere where my time, my services, and where I feel valued.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah.
and I feel like work ethic also is situational. So my dad is an immigrant, was an immigrant, and my mom, she was born here, but they always instilled like work hard, like in whatever you do, if it's school, whether it's work, they always had instilled in all of me and my siblings to be hard workers, to give your 100%
Yeah.
in anywhere you are. And I think because of their generation, my dad was always like, work somewhere where you have security.
Mm.
So my first job was at Target, and he's like, hey, that's such a great job. Stay there. Target's such a good company, work your way up. And when I left, he was kind of upset. He's like, hey, you had job security there.
Right.
And I'm like, yeah, Dad, but, that's not my passion. And that's another thing that I wanted to bring up. I think millennials, they want to work somewhere where, that they're passionate about.
Yeah.
So
And-
that they can thrive within their work environment. Like, I feel like this new role that I started is perfect for me because I love speaking to people.
Yeah.
I can talk to people all day. I can listen to people all day. I feel like I thrive in conversation. But yeah, I think that's my take on work ethic. Like, it's situational, but also, we're millennials, so.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Well, and I mean, I love your call out about a specific distinction in terms of either being an immigrant to this country or being a first generation. That's something I can definitely relate to because my mother and my husband are both immigrants to this country. And so there is something in terms of, I think, that the further you get away from the immigrant, generation, the further you get away from it, the more candidly people start to take for granted, like the opportunities that we have here. For me,
Right, and I feel like
Yeah.
I have a pressure. Like,
Yeah.
I have a pressure because of my dad, because I am a first generation.
Right.
There's a pressure on me that I have to, like, succeed. I can't be paycheck to paycheck. My parents weren't first-time homeowners till they were, like, 40. So, I just feel like there's a pressure as a first generation worker here.
it is. I think that's very like it's almost like, hey, the sacrifices that we know that our parents or our spouse had to make to come here, and again, not taking for granted because we know it firsthand. Like, I have family members and friends and loved ones to this day that no matter how hard they work, no matter how much they would apply for jobs, no matter how educated, I mean, for God's sakes, like in the Philippines, I think everybody, including the homeless people in the Philippines, have a college degree. Like, not an exaggeration. So you can be in other countries highly, highly, highly educated, and you can work super hard, and you could have even made your way and worked your way in terms of promotions, and that does not guarantee that you're going to have an opportunity. You know, you have cyclical poverty. That's just like, if you're born into that, that's what you're staying. That's not the premise of what this country was built on. It was built on the idea that if you work hard, you can create any opportunity for yourself, right? And so from an immigrant perspective, that is not something you take for granted. But I do feel the further you get away from that, the more you do start to take it for granted. You know, unless you're extremely well-traveled and worldly, and you've seen firsthand what that looks like, and you've experienced it firsthand in other countries, it's very hard to have perspective, you know, on that. So awesome call out, guys. I loved it all. I loved all of the, you know, just the perspectives. I hope everybody took something away who's here on this discussion panel, and also anybody who's watching. I always just encourage you, like, let your minds take in information. If you feel resistance to something that's different than how you see it, try to pull those walls down and try to allow that information to kind of enter into your brain space and process it and go, my goal in hearing someone else is to try to see it from their perspective, is to try to understand it. If I still don't, ask questions, be curious. You know, that's something, it's an art form I feel like we've lost in today's society. Like, people are scared to ask questions. Ask questions, be curious, you know, engage with people, get to know them, and be open to those views, because listen, we all have something to learn from every single other human being on this planet, regardless of your age, your ethnicity, you know, your gender. It doesn't matter, all of it. Like, we all have something to learn from one another, and those things that we learn is what helps us become better humans and become better contributors to society. And really, if you want to talk about legacy, that's the real legacy, right? It's like, what is that real meaningful mark as a human that we've left on the world? You know, not all of us are going to be some, like, you know, world-renowned inventors or innovators that are going to go down in history books. But you know what? The other marks that we leave in terms of our legacy with our family. You know, I just went to San Diego and spent some time with my mom's side of the family for the first time in 10 years. And all we did mostly was sit around and talk about my grandmother in the Philippines, because she has such a huge legacy. Good, bad, and some not so pretty stuff. I'll just leave it at that. But nonetheless, like, she has this huge legacy that's going to continue to go on for generations, you know? And so I just really encourage everybody to do that. Continue these conversations outside of here, and to talk to family members and friends, like maybe even that scary relative who starts off every conversation with, I don't want to talk about politics, but we all have those, right? Like, everybody has that relative that starts off their sentence like that.
We don't invite him.
Even, like, don't even be afraid of that person. Like, you know, and if you go into it open, and, you know, and hopefully by you being open, people will do that, return that in favor, and be open as well. And we'll just continue to do our best here. With each generation, I actually feel more confident than ever we're building a better world, and we're building a better future, because I'm an eternal optimist, and I have incredible optimism for our future generations, for our little young people today. I feel really excited about, like, what their future can hold, and let's just keep talking. So I'll thank everybody. Thank you, everybody on the screen, for your time today. It's greatly appreciated. I might continue to recruit you for future conversations. So thank you for being available and open and sharing. And thank you to this wonderful panel here, and to my husband that's off doing things with our little people. But thank you so much, and have an awesome rest of your day. And by the way, as always, don't forget that like, you can link to if you want, like and subscribe and share. And if you haven't subscribed to my YouTube channel, Mom Mogul of 4, please do so. Please be out there and sharing that. It helps this, you know, Mama of 4 and also business owner to go ahead and continue to grow all of the different businesses we have going on. It's a huge help to me. Thanks so much. Bye.